Fine. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit further the story of Manasseh. We're going to see the psukim inside. Very interesting. Just to give a brief overview, is there's a couple of psukim in Mlachim Beis, and there's a couple of psukim in Dvri Hayim Beis. In Dvri Hayim, it's a little more elaborate on the story. The psukim give more detail, but there's a lot more from Chazal that doesn't say beferish in the psukim, which hopefully we'll get to maybe today, but hopefully. Even if not today, hopefully we'll get to it by the end of this week. So, Chizkiah HaMelech, we spoke earlier, he didn't want to get married, he didn't want to have children. Yeshaya Navi comes to him, tells him you have to get married, you have to have children. He says, I saw Baruch HaKodesh, I'm going to have children that are no good, I don't want to have children. It's an interesting cheshbon. We spoke about this the other day. It's an interesting cheshbon. But Lamaisa, the Navi wasn't asking. So the Navi said, I'll marry you off to my sister's daughter, whatever it was, and he ended up getting married, and he lived another 15 years, and in those 15 years he had two children. I think one of them died in his lifetime, and the other one was Manasseh, who lived for a long time, but we'll see about what his story was. So the end of Parak Chof in Mlachim Beis says that Vayishkav Chizkiyahu Avosav, Chizkiyahu passed on, Vayimlech Manasseh b'nai Tachtav, and Manasseh, his son, took over. Now I'm going to read it. I think it's about 18 psukim over here in Malachim that discuss the story of Manasseh. So this is Paragraph Aleph. Ben Shtei Mesri Shana Manasseh b'Malach. Manasseh became king when he was 12 years old. B'Chamishim v'Chomer Shana Malach b'Yerushalayim. In 55 years he was king of Yerushalayim. B'Shem Imay Chevtziva, and his mother's name was Chevtziba. Again, she was married to Chizkiyahu HaMelech through Yeshaya was the Shadchan, as we spoke, as the Gemara says in Brachos. Vayas hara b'einei Hashem, and he did bad things in the eyes of Hashem. Ketayavos hagoyim asher hayrish Hashem epnei b'nei Yisrael. A very basic concept. We know that in these parashiyos that we're learning now, Pinchas, Matos Masei, there's a lot in the Torah about what Klal Yisrael has to do when they come to Eretz Yisrael. One of the main mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael had to do was to get rid of the goyim. Why? Not because the goyim are taking over our land, but because they're Avdei Avodah Zarah, and they had a tremendous hashpah, and there was a tremendous koyach hatumah from their Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael. So we had to combat that and get rid of the tumah of the Avodah Zarah and get rid of the Avodah Zarah. The problem is that if we're going to leave these people alive, then they're going to continue worshiping the Avodah Zarah, and they could be mashpia on Klal Yisrael to do Avodah Zarah. So therefore, if one of the Sheva Amamin, if one of the people from the 7 nations is makabel on himself not to do Avodah Zarah anymore, he's considered a ger toshav, and he's not Shem Shabbos, right? But he doesn't do Avodah Zarah. Ger toshav is makabel on himself Shev Mitzvahs Pnei Noach, and mainly not to do Avodah Zarah. So many times the pasuk refers to Avodah Zarah as that which Hakadosh Baruch Hu was mitzvah us to get rid of before we came into Eretz Yisrael. So this is what it says by Manasseh. Hashem bedavka tried to get rid of the goyim before the Yidden settled in Eretz Yisrael, to get rid of them, to make sure there was no Avodah Zarah, that they shouldn't get into trouble with this. Now here's where we see something terrible. Chizkiyahu HaMelech went out of his way to destroy all the Avodah Zarah. Not only did he destroy Avodah Zarah, but the yeshivas were booming in his days. It was tremendous kol Torah in every bismedrash. The Gemara says in Sandhedrin of Tzadidal, which we could talk about more. The Gemara says that there wasn't a tinik v'tinoikes, there wasn't a bucket b'chol dinei tumas v'taras midonvad be'ersheva. Sanherib came to fight a war against Klal Yisrael. Chizkiyahu HaMelech stuck a sword in the chotzer of the bismedrash, and he says anybody who leaves the bismedrash is going to get stabbed with the sword. Makriya, don't leave. Pretty threatening kind of a rebbe. So he said everybody, Gans Klal Yisrael at the time became tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, and it was an unbelievable thing. It was an unheard of kind of idea, especially if you look at what the other Malachim did and the recent, what happened, shortly before him, and what's going to happen shortly after him, was a terrible, calamity in terms of Shmiras Torah and mitzvahs. So Manasseh goes and he rebuilds all the bamas that his father destroyed. Vayakam mizbechos l'Baal, and he built mizbechos for the Baal, which we spoke by Achav and Eliyahu, that they were over the Baal in those days. Vayas Asherah, Kasher Osa Achav Melech Yisrael. His role model, so to speak, is mashma from the Psukim was Achav. And the Gemara even mentions this. And he built Mizbechos Labal, and he made an Asherah like Achav did, and he bowed down to the entire Tzavar Shemayim, to all the Kechavim and the Mazalas, like we saw in the Rambam, that was the Avodah Zarah that they did. And it's interesting, Radak speaks out over here that until Achav, we don't find that any of the Malchei Yisrael did the Asherah. So the innovation that Achav did was the Asherah. Mנשה goes and rebuilds all the Bamis and goes to the Asherah of Achav. And more than that, and he does Baal, and he's Mishtach v'lchol tzvar Shemayim. And then it says, Ubana Mizbeches beBeis Hashem. And he did a new level sin. He built Mizbeches l'Avodah Zarah in the Beis HaMikdash. Asher Omar Hashem b'Yerushalayim asim eshmi. The place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it's going to be Mashra Shechina, that is where Mנשה decides to go build his Avodah Zarah. He built Mizbeches for all the Avodah Zarah, for all the Avodas Kechavim, in the two Chatzeros in the house of Hashem, the two courtyards in the house of Hashem. That would be the Ezras Kohanim. Right, there's certain areas in the Beis HaMikdash that only the Kohanim were allowed to go in. So he built one Mizbech over there, and he built another Mizbech in the other Chatzer, which was the Ezras Yisrael, where the non-Kohanim were allowed to go. Now, it's interesting, we mentioned the Mishnah in Tainus on Shavuos B'Tammuz, that it was Hemid Tzelem Behechel. He put a Tzelem Behechel. Soraf HaPustamus HaSatar V'Hemid Tzelem Behechel. So the Yerushalmi and others, try to figure out what the story was with HaPustamus. HaPustamus didn't make the Pashtus is that the way to read the Mishnah is that the Soraf HaPustamus HaSatar was one thing, but Hu Amad Tzelem Behechel. And the Tzelem was put up in the Heichel. And the Yerushalmi learned that was the Tzelem of Mנשה. That happened on Shavuos B'Tammuz. Okay? V'hever es b'nai be'esh. And he put his son through a fire. That means that he did Moilach. V'oinen v'nichesh v'asa oiv yadainim. He did all kinds of kishuv. And all kinds of oiv is, communicating with the dead. Oinen is some kind of predicting the future through different methods. And v'yadaini, he did anything that he could to do things to annoy HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Till now, people were doing things because, it was fun, it was gishmak, but they weren't doing it necessarily lahachis. Over here, Mנשה was different than the other Malachim until this point because they were doing lahachis. Hashem said, don't do oiv. I'm going to go do oiv. He said, don't be ma'aynin. I'm going to go be ma'aynin. So it says in Chazal, Julia Gemara, the Gemara's welcome, that the Mizbeach had a fire when they built the Beis HaMikdash. So the fire that was on the Mizbeach that came down in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu on the Mishkan was still there. It was there throughout the entire time of all the Malchei Yisrael until this point. Mנשה went and he was Misalek as ha'esh el yoyna shahayisa Mizbeach me'esh sheyarda sham b'Yerushalmi omar hu v'silka. When Shlomo HaMelech, I made a mistake. When Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, Yorda Eish Min HaShamayim and the Mizbeach that he built. By the way, the Gemara says in Tzvachim that the fire of the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu was still there. B'Shas Ma'isa, Shlomo HaMelech was still there, and he went and he did whatever he was able to do to get rid of that fire. Now, this wasn't a regular fire with the rules of physics. This was a fire with the rules of physics of Ruchnius. And he went and he did whatever he was able to be Masalik to get rid of that fire. One of the highlights, so to speak, of the Mishkan, one of the Nisim that was always a constant in the Beis HaMikdash was the fire in the Mizbeach. So Mנשה goes and he does the lahachis to show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're not interested in anything they have to show us. We're not interested in anything they have to offer us. It's all about ourselves. Vayosem es pesel lo asher asherosa, and he placed the Asherah that he made, Babayis Asher Omar Hashem El David Vel Shlomo B'noi Babayis Hazeh U'B'Yerushalayim Asher B'chartim Mikol Shiftei Yisrael Asam Meshmi Le'olam. He placed the Asherah in the bayis, in the house that Hashem told David and Shlomo his son, in this house in Yerushalayim I chose from all the Shiftei Yisrael, I'm going to place my name there forever. Asam Meshmi Le'olam. He goes and plants the Asherah in the Makom HaMikdash. in the Beis Hamikdash. What does this mean? It's an interesting pasuk. So Hashem said to David and Shlomo, not going to chase Klal Yisrael out of the land. They're in Eretz Yisrael, they're going to stay in Eretz Yisrael, it's going to be okay. Rak, there's a Tanai over here. There's on one condition. If they're going to follow the mitzvahs that I commanded them to do, and if they follow the Torah that I commanded them, if they do that, so then Klal Yisrael will stay in Eretz Yisrael. But if not, if they're not trying to Torah mitzvahs, then they're not going to be able to stay in Eretz Yisrael. This is where it's at. And but unfortunately they didn't listen. And Manasseh went and convinced people and forced people he talked people into doing the Ra, all these Averas. And what's interesting is that, unfortunately, we all have Yetzirah, and if a person falls into doing an Avera, okay. So there's a Mahalach Tshuva, he has Charata, any little bit of Tshuva counts, as Rabbi Yoina says, so fine, so it's okay. But there was a tremendous Avodah, as we spoke before, to get rid of the Goyim that were in Eretz Yisrael, to rid Eretz Yisrael of Avodah Zarah. So now you're going and you're bringing it back. The problem is like this, Shtein Chazal, that many times if a person goes back to do his original sin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu may look at him and say, hey, you never really did anything to show me that you improved. So we're bringing Eretz Yisrael back to the state where it was before Klal Yisrael moved in there. Then it's almost like there's no Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. So we're bringing Eretz Yisrael back to a very, very terrible and low situation. And Hashem spoke to his servants the Nevi'im saying, which Nevi'im? Which Nevi'im are we talking about over here? So Rashi brings that from Chazal, that we're talking about Nochum and Chavakuk, which we mentioned, they're part of the Treyosar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Navi do not want to associate which Nevi'im they were. Because to put a tzaddik in the same sentence as this Rasha, we wouldn't want to do that. This Rasha was so terrible, he sinned on such a high level, that to put the Nevi'im, Nochum and Chavakuk, who said the Nevuah at his time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to do that. It's true. What Menashe Melech Yehuda did, all these tayevis, all these disgusting averis. Yeah. He did worse. He did worse than all the goyim that were in Eretz Yisrael before him. From the Amori. The Amori were the chief of the Avodah Zarah then, right? We know from the Gemara. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. They had a certain Mahalach HaChaim. And we are mitzvah in the Torah not to follow, not to follow the ways of the Avodah Zarahs. And he did worse than all of them. Which is a fascinating thing, to see how low he went. But Yachdi Games Yehuda Begilulov, and he got Shevet Yehuda, and those that were with Shevet Yehuda to do the Avodah Zarah. To get involved in the Gilulim are the Avodah Zarahs. Therefore, so says Hashem Elikei Yisrael, the God of the Jewish people. I'm going to bring a tragedy, a terrible tragedy to Yerushalayim and Yehuda. That whoever is going to hear it, their ears are going to ring. Titzalna is a lashon of mitzaltayim, cymbals. When cymbals crash, it makes a loud noise. Everyone can hear it. Rings in your ears. And it's a big rash. The Radak says these instruments make a big rash. V'notisi al Yerushalayim es kav shemrein ves meshkeles beisachav. I'm going to place on Yerushalayim a kav shemrein. What's a kav shemrein and what's meshkeles beisachav? So there's two things over here. So kav shemrein is that just like a builder, the Navi over here is using lashonos from construction workers to show how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring about the destruction of Yerushalayim. It's very interesting. If you learn Navi, Yeshaya, Yirmiyah, Yechezkel, a lot of Treyosar, it's written very metaphorically. It doesn't say, what's going to happen. It talks b'derech mashal a lot. poetically, b'derech mashal, and there's a lot hidden. There's a lot of depth in the words of the Navi. Speaking machlekes achronim, when Yeshaya Navi saw Nevuah, what did he see? Did he have a picture and the words of the Navi is how he translated it? Or he saw the words in the Nevuah? Or he heard a koil in the Nevuah? Not a Navi. I don't claim to be a Navi, so I can't really tell you. So big machlekes. It's very, very not pashut. There's many different shitas, many different rayas. There's different levels of Nevuah, so maybe each level of Nevuah was a different experience. The pashtus, that's the right way to look at it. So the pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the Navi that Menatisi al Yerushalayim es kav shemer ves mishkeles beisachav. The same way a builder, when he wants to make something straight, he uses a level to make sure it's straight, to make sure it's equal. The tragedy that's going to happen to Yerushalayim is going to be the same tragedy that's going to happen to Shemer. It's going to be on the same level. The destruction that's going to happen to one is going to happen in the other. Mishkeles beis achav. Mishkeles is a weight. When you want to make something straight, from vertically, right? So you tie a rock to a string and you hold it down, and that string is going to be perfectly straight when it stops swinging, obviously, right? So that's mishkeles beis achav. And there's an understanding over here, could be even from Chazal, that what it means is that Achav is not going to get a Chel Kanel Mabah. Why is that? Because this is going from top to bottom. So Achav is all the way on the bottom, and what's connected to him all the way on top is his Chel Kanel Mabah. And that's going to be taken away from him. Umachisi es Yerushalayim kashayimches hatzalachas. I will erase Yerushalayim. Wipe the people out from Yerushalayim. Kashayimches hatzalachas, like I clean off a plate. Which means, take a plate and turn it over. Right? Mocha v'hovach al poneha. It will be erased and it will be turned on its face. We'll clean it out, wipe it out. V'natashti es she'eretz nachlasi, and v'nasadim b'yad oiveyim v'hoyu lovaz v'limshisa l'chol oiveyim. Kodesh Baruch Hu will forsake us, the people that are left over in Yerushalayim, es she'eretz nachlasi, and I'll give them over to the hands of the enemies, and they'll be tortured. They'll be left in a bizayon, and they'll be left as spoils of the war, v'limshisa, and they'll get trampled on by all their enemies. Yan, because asher osu es hara be'enai, because they did evil in my eyes, vayiyu machisim ma'isi, and they did things specifically to anger me. Let's talk for a minute over here. There's two kinds of mumrim. A mumra is somebody who's over averis, and there's a big question in the Gemara: is this person considered a from person or not? I mean, can he shecht? Can we trust that shechita or not? So there's two things. There's a mumar l'teoven and there's a mumar l'hachas. So the question always is, why is this person sinning? What kind of averis does he do? Does he eat chaza because it tastes good, or he eats chaza because the Torah says you're not allowed to eat it? So I'm going to go eat it anyways. If he's eating it because it tastes good, okay, so fine. So he found something good to eat, so it's not so kosher, right? He's not doing it to anger Hashem. He's not trying to do it to step on Hashem's toes, kaviyachol, right? But when you're doing something lahachis, it's much worse, because you're doing it in spite of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told you. It was this point in history that they angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the maximum since Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim. And here's where things get very sad. V'gam dom noki shofach Mנשה harbe ma'oyed ad asher miles Yerushalayim pelepeh. There's a tremendous amount of bloodshed that Mנשה spilled, until the entire Yerushalayim was covered from one side to the other, full of blood, from all the bloodshed that he did. What was this all about? So the Ralbag explains that anybody who spoke up against doing Avodah Zarah, so Mנשה felt that was a rebellion in his malchus, so he would kill him. Anybody who didn't worship Avodah Zarah, he would kill him. And it states in Gemara that he would kill the Nevi'im. And not only did he kill the Nevi'im, I want to get to the Gemara Yevamis, where the Gemara Yevamis talked about that he killed his own grandfather Yeshaya. Just like Izebel was Achav's wife, killed all the Nevi'ei Hashem, Mנשה was also of that belief that anybody who speaks against my avodah zarah is going to get killed. V'gam levad mechatasa shehechtis Yehuda lasis Rabbeinu Hashem. Besides the avodah zarah that he did, there was a tremendous amount of murder going on, tremendous amount of bloodshed. V'yesa Divrei Mנשה, and all the rest of the stories of Mנשה v'chol ha'shra'osa v'chatasa shechota halayhem ksuvim al sefer Divrei Hayom l'malchei Yehuda. The rest of the stories of Mנשה are written in the sefer Divrei Hayom of Malchei Yehuda. Vayishkav Mנשה ma'avosav. Mנשה died, and with his fathers, I mean, he was buried with his fathers. Vayikover began Beisai began Uzzah. So we're going to get to that. He did tshuva, which the pasuk doesn't mention anything of over here at all. And they buried him began Uzzah in the garden by his house. Vayimloich Omain ben Oitachtov, and his son Omain took over. Ad Kan in Malachim Bey is the story of Yeshaya. Now I want to go through quickly in Divrei Hayomim, because Divrei Hayomim adds a lot more to the story, and then we'll go through some Gemaras and some Chazal to see what exactly happened in the days of Mנשה. So here we go. It's Perik Lamed Gimel in Divrei Hayomim Beis. Psukim are Azoi. Ben Shtei Mesri Shana. I'm going to read through it quickly because most of it we just read. It says Perik Lamed Gimel Pasuk Aleph in Divrei Hayomim Beis. Ben Shtei Mesri Shana Mנשה B'Molech B'Chamish V'Chamish Shana Melech B'Yerushalayim V'Yas Rabbeinu Hashem Getzay V'Zagam Shahosh Hashem B'Pnei B'nei Yisrael V'Yoshav V'Yiven Es Abamis Asher Nitat Yichizkiyahu Aviv. He built those exact bamis that his father destroyed. Vayitatz means smashed them. Vayokim mizbechos leBa'olim vayas hasherais v'yishtachel chol tzvashman v'yabereisam. Uvanu mizbechos leBeis Hashem v'shram Hashem b'Yerushalayim yiyashmi li'olam. The pasuk Rashi says hapasuk kovel al Mנשה. The pasuk is screaming out against Mנשה shabana mizbechos le'avodah zarah v'bayisham HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he writes shishkan shmisham. In the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says he wants to, his name should rest there, in the Beis HaMikdash, it should be Ashras HaShechina. The, fascinating thing, the Gemara calls Nevi'im, many times the Gemara refers to Nevi'im as Divrei Kabbalah. So, we get excited when we hear the word Kabbalah, it means all kind of mystical thing, that's not what it means. The Gemara, the Rishonim understand that the Lashon Kabbalah means for Lashon of Kovel, to scream out in pain, it's like when something terrible happens, you just scream why is this happening? What's going on over here? So that's how the Nevi'im would walk around. The Nevi'im would walk around being Ma'achiach Klal Yisrael b'divrei Kabbalah. That's why it was called Kabbalah. So maybe else there was a Mesorah, that's true too, right? But that's one of the pshatim divrei Kabbalah because they were kovel, like Rashi says over here in the pasuk. Vayiven mizbachos l'chol tzvah shamayim b'shtei chatzos Beis Hashem, which again that was in the Ezra's Kohanim and the Ezra's Yisrael. V'uhever is born of Be'esh, and he passed his children through the fire. Begev and Hinoim. That did not say in the previous in Malachim, which means that was the area where they did it. V'oinen v'nichesh v'kishef v'osa oivi yadayni. Over here it says he did kishuv too. All different types of things. Here, Balasis Rabbeinu Hashem Lachisai, again, he did multiple things, many things to do to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu angry. Zok Rashi Lefisha, here Balasis V'hoisav al Pesel HaSemel Asher Osa. You'd think that he would do a little avodah zarah and stop. No, he kept on adding more and more. Vayosem es Pesel HaSemel Asher Osa V'beso Lekim Asher Omer Lekim Al David Val Shloim B'noi B'bayis Hazeh U'Yerushalayim Asher B'chatzim Kol Shivtei Yisrael Asher Eshmi Le'eloim. Interesting that it says La'elam, which means La'elam. Obviously, there's more to the story here. With La'elam, V'loi oisif lahasir esregel Yisrael me'alu adam eshamarti labeseichem. We saw this there also. Rakim yishmeru la'ases eskol asher tivissum l'chol ha'terah v'achukum ha'mishpatum b'yad Moshe. V'yesam Mנשה es Yehuda v'yeshu Yisraelim la'ases rob min ha'goyim asher hishmer Hashem mipnei b'nei Yisrael. Fine. V'ydaber Hashem al Mנשה v'lamu lo yikshivu. Hashem spoke to Mנשה and to his people and they did not listen. And here is the story that we did not see in Malachim. Vayaveh Hashem alayim, esorei hatzav Hashem l'melech Ashur, vayilkedu es Mנשה b'choichem. So Mנשה wasn't listening to Hashem. Hashem sent him messages from the Nevi'im, Nachum and Chavakuk, as Rashi and Chazal mentioned in Malachim. And here Hashem is punishing him, and we don't see that in Malachim. So Hashem sends upon him the generals from Melech Ashur, and they catch Manasseh, and they trap him b'choichem. B'choichem means thorns. And what the Metzudas over here learns that b'choichem is that it was like, when you see the police arresting somebody, they put handcuffs on him so he can't run away. And they put a leash on him, but the leash had a lot of thorns around his neck. So there were a lot of sharp things poking into his neck, so he couldn't run away. Vayasruhu ben Chushtayim, and they put him in chains. Vayilichuhu Bavel, and they schlepped him down to Bavel. So there's Yerushalmi over here that talks about Arichas about this, that hopefully we'll get to see inside. That all of a sudden Menashe started davening to Hashem. Vayispalu leilov, and he davened to Hashem vayayasu loy. And Hashem heard his tefillah. Vayishbat chinasai, Hashem heard his beseechings. Vayishivei Yerushalayim l'malchusay, Hashem brought him back to Yerushalayim. Vayeda Menashe ki Hashem Elokim. And now Menashe know that Hashem is a true God. And Menashe dropped all the avodah zarah. The pasuk went on to say just before that there was nobody in the history, especially the Malchi Yehuda, the Malchi Yisrael, that sinned as much as Menashe and did as many things lahachis as much as Menashe. So Yerushalmi says, and again I hope to see this inside, they put him in a pot and they started roasting him. And he started calling out to his avodah zarah. And nothing was happening because the Getchkes can't answer him. Save me this one, save me that one, save me this one, save me that one, save me. Go nisht. Nothing. Nothing happened. That avodah zarah, this avodah zarah, yen avodah zarah, fifth one, sixth one, 10 avodah zarah, 20 avodah zarahs, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And he feels like his time is up, and he feels like he's going to go very, very soon. And then he says, "Oi, 1 second. 1 second." Like in all the stories, his life is flashing in front of his eyes, whatever, And Menashe is almost about to be done. And he says, 1 second. Maybe. A match of charota. Maybe Hashem Elokim. Maybe I'll scream out to Hashem and I'll daven to Hashem now, and Hashem will answer my tefillas. Vayishiveyu Yerushalayim l'malchusay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu heard his tefillah and brought him back to his malchus. Zok the Gemara, we're going to see it inside hopefully soon. That if we're going to say that Menashe ein lechelik le'olam haba, we're going to be preventing other people from doing tshuva. Because let's say the person who fell the furthest away from Torah and mitzvahs was Menashe. What happened was he had this Osiris, and this terrible incident where he was trapped by the Melech Ashur, and they were taking him down to Bavel. You have to understand what was going on. We spoke before that he was killing anybody that didn't listen to him. So he was an extremely powerful person. And now he gets caught. How embarrassing and how shameful that is for him. And now, not only that, he gave up his whole belief, all his beliefs, to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayeda Menashe ki Hashem Elokim. As I stated in Pasuk. V'achachen banachem echitzayne lir David, ma'arova legichem benachav v'love b'shardogim v'savav leifle v'yikbeh ma'oid v'yasam tzaricha v'cholarma b'tzis b'Yehuda. He comes back to Yerushalayim and he fortifies Yerushalayim because he doesn't want the Goyim to come in anymore. He says Yerushalayim is going to be a place for the Jewish people. We're going to serve Hashem in Yerushalayim. It's a new program. Can you imagine what the people were thinking? So just a couple of weeks ago, he was still killing people in the streets of Yerushalayim because they didn't want to be Avodah Zarah. This guy comes back to himself and now says, anybody does Avodah Zarah, out of here. He removed all the Avodah Zarahs, and he removed the tzelem that he put in the Beis Hamikdash. He removed all the Avodah Zarahs. He had to do a real good cleaning in the Beis Hamikdash. He started from the Beis Hamikdash. Could you imagine? He went into the Beis Hamikdash mocking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He put out the fire of the Mizbeach because he says to Hashem, I don't care about you. The other Malachim, they said, we'll do Avodah Zarah, we'll believe in Hashem too. Contantzen of Beid Chasanas. That's what Elianovi's problem was with the Achav. He said, says you're bouncing from one to the other, When it's convenient for you, you serve Avodah Zarah. When it's convenient for you, you serve Hashem. Right? So a person who lives his life like that, okay, at least he has some kind of Hashem is somewhat in his life. Over here, Manasseh was doing anything he could to uproot anybody that any shaykhs Hashem in his lifetime. It's like Chapella. Then he gets rid of all of this. Vayosar salehei anechor v'asasemel mibeis Hashem v'chol hamizbuchos asher bona b'har beis Hashem b'Yerushalayim vayashlech utza le'ir vayiven es mizbeach Hashem. He rebuilt the mizbeach Hashem. Vayizbach alav zivchei shlomim v'toida, and he was makriv a korban shlomim and a toida. For all you know, he didn't wear tefillin. For all you know, he wasn't Shem Shabbos. This guy was doing it. He was a real Ernst David Zornik. Yeah? And now he's being makriv karbonos to Hashem. Vayomer liYehuda l'laved es Hashem elokei Yisrael. And he goes and he says that Yehuda, Rabbi Yisai, it's time now that we go and we serve Hashem. Aval oidam zeichem babamis. Rak l'Hashem elokei. The people were still being makriv on bamis, but it was for Hashem. Which was a little bit wrong, because you really should have been makriv in the Beis HaMikdash, but v'yeser divrei Menashe u'tfilosei el elekov v'divrei ha'chayzim ha'medabrim elav b'shem Hashem elokei Yisrael hinam al divrei Malchei Yisrael. And the rest of the stories of Menashe and his tefillah that he davened, v'divrei ha'chayzim ha'medabrim elav. The chayz is a Navi. The Nevi'im that spoke to him, b'shem Hashem elokei Yisrael, all this information is written al divrei Malchei Yisrael. Utfilosai v'hei asaloi v'chol chatasoi umaloi v'amakoymes asher banu b'hem bomois v'hemera asherim v'apsilin lefnei hikonoi hinam ksuvim al divrei choizoi. Here's where it gets really interesting. The tefillah that he said, and all his averis, and all his chatoi, his chatosoi, the averis that he did, umaloi, and what he was moil b'Hashem, and all the places, all the areas where he built bombers, and all the areas where he set up an Asherah and Avodah Zarah is the Fnei Hikaneh before he did Tshuva. Hinam Ksuvim al Divrei Chayzai. It's all written in the Sifrei HaNevi'im. It's all mentioned in the Navi. It's all there. Mayishkav Menashe Mavoisav. Menashe passed away. V'yikberu Beisai. They buried him in his house. V'yim lech Amen B'nai Tachta. And Amen B'nai took over. Amen was Nishken Goyse Tzadik. Where is the Tefillah of Menashe? What is the Tefillah of Menashe? So I want to see if we have time. Yeah, it looks like we have a couple of minutes to go through the Yirushalmi now. Go through the Yirushalmi, and then we have the actual nusach of the tefillah of what Menashe said. So let me get a Yirushalmi. I think we have it over here, maybe. The Me'am Loyes, when he goes through the parsha of Menashe, so he brings this. It's about a page long. It's kedai to go through it to see what he was davening about. What he had to do tshuva for all his averos. So let's see Vashteta and Yushalmi. It's Daf Nun in the old Yirushalmi. This is where it is. So, V'chima also Menashe. What did Menashe do? It's Daf Nun Aleph here in the Yirushalmi. Ksiv vayom mehem cholach iskeo lamois ad kimezat of lesiche kimezat of lamazav lesiche losid lavai. Right, Lamabara. That's what the Gemara says in Brachas. Amalei v'lama. Why do I deserve this punishment? Amalei delebos mikmal chabenin. You don't want to have children. Amalei lama lebos mikmal chabenin. Why do you want to have children? Amalei chamistan to make him by Rishia. Could begin kain lebos mikmal benin. I'm gonna have children that are Rishoim. I don't want to have children. Amalei sav barate. Marry my daughter. Dilmamini menach. Make him by nashtav. Maybe my schus and your schus will be going to have good children. Avagav like come, ella barnash bish. Ava pigain, you had a child that was bad. It doesn't chsiv. Ukli kelev roim. Everything was bad. Omalei loy lechana shoma any kaifet el lamash omali's keni shomali in reisa chaloim is kosher mechazen is kosher kvoitzel shlosh dvarim but nitza velu hen l'tula tzedakah l'tshuva. Says I'm not going to listen to you, but I have a messiah that when things are difficult, there's three things to do: tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah. Shlosh number pasuk echad, and the Gemara darshans this. Fine. Skip a little bit over here. Okay, here's where it says that he killed Yeshaya Hanavi. Kadekam Mנשה have a pari chayre Yeshaya. He was chasing after Yeshaya. By Mikdaline, he wanted to kill him. Arak min kadmain, he kept on running away. Arak la'arza, Yeshaya ran into a tree. Ubale arza, and he got swallowed up in the tree. A nace happened, Yeshaya got swallowed up in the tree. Chasar tzitzisa the gulsei, a little bit of his hair was sticking out. Aton va'amrin kadmoi omalon azlo menasrun arza. He said, let's chop down the tree. Menasru la'arza. V'schami dama neged. He chopped down the tree and there was blood inside because Yeshaya was in there. Hashem did not want to forgive him. Does not have a chelik lasid lavai. Says this that we say that Menashe ain't like chelik mabo. That's only until he was chayzer b'tshuva. Akol achrosa shehechisa Menashe nemar shleasa tshuva. V'ksiv ki omen harbe ashma lehoisef helechidish. V'ksiv gam dam nok shofach Menashe harbe ma'od asher milei es Yushlaim pelepeh. V'chiev shalabasa v'dam l'malas es Yushlaim dam noki pelepeh l'shahargas Yeshaya sheyashokol k'moisha v'ksiv bei pelepeh daberbai. Yeshaya was shokol k'moisha. It says pelepeh daberbai because he killed Yeshaya. That's why it says he was memale Yerushalayim dam pelepeh. Tzivei daber Hashem al Menashe v'lamiv le'ekshivu v'yova elei masari atava shal melech v'yilchidus Menashe b'choichem. Mahu b'choichem b'kiroi minikaya. What does that mean? Lochdu oisei ben achoichem yonkim edakim loshna achoich asher b'levonin. Kiroi hu erez yonik v'rach v'sofim be'erez tagum etalbich yeri arzen. Some kind of wooden box over here, the Yerushalmi says. He made a big cauldron of copper. And they put him inside. And they would heat up a fire underneath it. He called out to every single avodah zarah in the world when he was getting cooked in this pot. Once he saw that none of that was working, Omar, he says, Zachar ani, I remember. He said, when I was little, my father would read to me a pasuk. It sounds like one of these Baal Tshuva stories. He says, when I was a little kid, I remember my father used to read me this pasuk in shul. He says, when a person is going through a tzara, state a pasuk in Parshas when all the tzaras are going to happen to you, at the end of the days, you'll do tshuva to Hashem. Start listening to Hashem. Hashem is a kel rachum. He won't let go of you. He won't destroy you. He will not forget the treaty he made with your forefathers. Because Hashem made a shvuah to them, and he says, this is my last chance. I'm going to say this pasuk.
Sorry, do you know where Rabbi Yagid is?
No, I don't see him. Usually he comes around, but I don't see him now. So, Harani Kaira Isai. I'm going to say this pasuk of Batzar L'chom Tzu'ucha. Im Aina Isi Mutav, Vim Lav Hakol Af Yeshavin. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to me, good. But if not, I know that the whole Yiddishkeit's fake. Because Batzar L'chom Tzu'ucha is a pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is maftiach. That if you're in a tzara and you call out to Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to listen to you and is going to save you. Mנשה says, I'm in a tzara right now. He was being cooked in a pot. Achmanis. the Melech Ashur. They trapped him. They caught him. They put him in a pot. The Malachei Hasharis were blocking all the entranceways of all the tefillahs that the tefillah of Menashe shouldn't go up. The Malachei Hasharis were furious because now all of a sudden this person that killed Yeshaya Hanavi, this person that killed so many people, or Yeshaya Hanavi that was equal to so many people, a person who spent his entire life serving Avodah Zarah, a person who spent his whole life preaching against HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Terasai, now he's davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should be Mekabel and B'tshuva. Malach Hashar closed up all the windows of Tefillah. There's nothing doing. This Tefillah is not going anywhere. V'hoyu Malach Hashar Saimim L'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rebbeinu Shalom Odom She'ovad Avodah Zarah, a person who serves Avodah Zarah, V'hemet Tzelem B'heichel, and he placed a getchke in the Beis HaMikdash. Ata Mekabel B'tshuva. You're going to be Mekabel this person B'tshuva. This is the worst of the worst of the worst. You're going to be Mekabel and B'tshuva. Amalehem, he said to Malachi Asharis, Any Mekabel B'tshuva? If I'm not going to be Mekabel this person B'tshuva, Harei ani noel hadelis b'fnei kol balei tshuva. Nobody else is going to be able to do tshuva because they're going to say, listen, Menashe wanted to be Chayzer B'tshuva, but he said kol api shavin. He says it's not worth anything. Yeah. So if we're not going to let the Kadosh Baruch Hu, if we're not going to be Mekabel this person B'tshuva, you're locking the door, you're slamming the door in the face of anybody else who wants to do tshuva. Ma'aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Hashem wanted to pick a fight with the Malachim. Obviously, it's not exactly how it works. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of Malachim too. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chazaloi chatzira mitachas kisei hakavod shaloi. What happened was that all the regular pathways and Mahalchim and Tefillah were all closed off. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a new way, a new mahalach of tshuva for Menashe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was chazaloi chatira mitachas kisei hakavod shaloi v'shamat chinasai hadahi dechsiv v'yispalel leilo v'yayasel v'yishmat chinas v'yishiveyu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu drilled a hole, kaviyachol, in the kisei hakavod, because any other pathway to accept the tefillah was blocked. And the understanding of this Gemara is as follows. Every other pathway of tefillah was blocked. That means that al pi the regular mahalach hatshuva, and that al pi the regular mahalach hatefillah, the taka was no hope. He taka was that bad. In the regular mahalach hatshuva and the regular mahalach hatefillah, nothing would have helped. It wouldn't have helped. It's going nish. Malachim don't do things on their own. There's a seder how HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the world run. Tefillah works in a certain way. Tshuva works in a certain way. G'dayla tshuva shamagas ad kisei hakavod. Tshuva works in a specific oifen. But this tshuva of Menashe, it wasn't just that he's doing tshuva, he needs to get close to Hashem. L'mafreya, it's going to go back, l'mafreya, that Menashe had charata for all the Avodah Zarah that he did for all of these years. 22 years, the Gemara says, he did Avodah Zarah. This happened 22 years into his Malchus. Because the Gemara equates him with Achav. The Pasuk equates him with Achav. Achav was Melech for 22 years. Achav did not do tshuva. Achav was killed in a war. We spoke. Menashe had the ability to do tshuva. But the tshuva that Menashe did came from such a deep place in Menashe's heart. And he went all the way back in time, and he said, when I was a little kid, my father would read me this pasuk in the Beis HaKnesses, "Batzalachom tzuchas kol haroi se'ela, kol hadvorim ha'ela b'achros hayomim, v'shavta ad Hashem alekecha." He said, I have no hope. He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is it. I'm all yours. That's what he said. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to create a new pathway of tshuva to be mekabel this tshuva. Because in the regular mahalach tshuva wouldn't work, in the regular mahalach tefillah wouldn't work. The regular mahalach of avodah, everything was closed up. Menashe was taken not worthy of his tefillahs being answered. But because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that no tefillah should ever go unanswered, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to accept Menashe's tefillah. The malachim didn't let. The malachim blocked all the mekayvets where tefillah goes up. Every single one of them. I would imagine, you know what that means? Every single Yid has a specific Mahalach and Avodah, and has his specific way that he davens. So each person has his specific Mahalach, has his specific pathway, right? Magen Avram says that every shul should have 12 windows. Comes from a Gemara. The Gemara comes from a pasuk in Daniel B'Chavim Psichen Lei, that you should have each shevet is supposed to be mechaven their tefillah. Each shevet has their pathway where the tefillah goes.
Aren't we only two? Or two and a half?
Maybe now it is, but it's supposed to be that there's 12. Each person should be mechaven to that his tefillah should be eilah through whichever window belongs to his shevet. The problem is that he didn't belong anywhere anymore. He went so far, he didn't belong to Klal Yisrael anymore. So how could this person have a tshuva? That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to be choisech estiru mitachas kisi Yaakov.
There's 12 windows.
What do you mean? Yeah, there's 12 basic mahalchim of drachim of how the tefillah goes up. And I want to just mention something else, that this is what Yerushalmi says. Yerushalmi asks, what's the difference between Yeravam, Achav, and Manasseh? So the Yerushalmi answers this question because there were mechadish averis that they never did before. What's the lashon of the Yerushalmi? The lashon of the Yerushalmi is v'kulam chidshu averis. All of them were mechadish averis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you see, the tshuva that a person does always has to make sense and correspond to the avera that the person did, right? So if a person is Mechal Shabbos, the person has to take on to be Mekabel, to be Shomer Shabbos properly, right? If a person speaks Lashon Hara, so he has to, make sure not to say Lashon Hara anymore and to talk good about people and to learn Torah, because that has to do with talking. That's the state in Gemara. But because Menashe was Mechadish in Averis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took that, was Mahapich that, changed that over from a Chiddush in Averis to become a Chiddush in the Mahalach HaTshuva. This was a brand new thing since B'rias Ha'olam that never existed. It was a Mahalach HaTshuva that was out of this world. By all means. It was entirely out of this world, this Mahalach HaTshuva. The Malachim did not allow for this Mahalach, for the regular Mahalach HaTshuva to exist. The pasuk says, "Shir Hashirim Shalach Yadim Min Achor." Pasuk that's referring to Menashe, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Imagine you're by a big event, and you're trying to imagine the big Rebbe comes to town, and everybody's trying to get onto the dais, and all the gabuim and all the there's all these people protecting them and not going, right? Then you see certain people, there's some like side entrance where they're sneaking in. So that's what was happening over here. That's what was happening with Menashe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to create this whole new Mahalach HaTshuva. Since B'rias Ha'olam, such a thing never existed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to sneak in the tefillas of Menashe. But because he was Mechadish Ba'averis, he was able to be Mechadish, a new Mahalach in Tshuva. We should be Zeichet, a Tshuva Shlema.
Thank you.
Ad Kam.
Where's everyone else?